Hello and welcome to Zoom Master Part 1. I'm Wendy Darris, and I've put together a series of 8 videos to help you learn Zoom. I'd like you to feel like a Zoom master. I want you to embrace Zoom to create smooth, skillful, and engaging experiences. I want you to become a Zoom master. What does mastery mean? In this respect, it means having control over something. I want you to have the proficiency and the knowledge, but also the ability and the command of using Zoom. I want you to feel like an expert. I'd like you to take a moment now and self-assess. 1 out of 10, how well do you feel you're a Zoom master? A 1 is, I've never used Zoom before, and a 10 is that you feel like you're already a Zoom master and there's not much more to learn. Write that down somewhere. At the end of my series, I hope that you'll skillfully be able to use Zoom tools for engagement, successfully manage your classrooms and meetings with confidence, be excited, feel excited about using Zoom, and perform like a Zoom master. I want you to think about a time when you, pre-Zoom, when you felt calm and connected, engaged, felt very confident that your meeting or your training went very successfully and smoothly. How did you feel? You know those students walked away or those participants walked away with exactly what you wanted them to get. And you felt confident about that. What tools did you use to help get there? Was it PowerPoint, a clicker, a projector, a whiteboard, a blackboard? Perhaps it was even an overhead projector. Regardless, at one point these tools were new to you. It was new technology. And at first you did not feel super confident. And you were more worried about the technology than engaging with your participants. I'd like you to go beyond that and be able to engage with your participants because you feel so good about Zoom. I'd like to go over the basics first. Anytime you learn something new, if you don't know the basics, it's a lot harder. So there's 3 main categories. Software, because Zoom is a software product. Platforms, because it makes a difference to what you're using. And the settings. So this is the desktop of a Mac computer. If you have a PC, it may look a little different. Regardless, we have the same things on our screen. And I'd like to review some terminology. Because when you learn something new, if you don't have shared vocabulary, there's going to be problems. We can't help each other. So let's talk about some common terminology that will help us guide us through using Zoom as a software program. The very first word is taskbar. And what I mean by taskbar is going to be at the top or bottom of your screen of your actual computer, whether it's a computer that rests on your desk or a tablet. And what the taskbar controls is the actual computer, not a particular software product. So the taskbar is what allows you to toggle or change between applications or programs, be able to check your Wi-Fi setting, be able to send something to print, etc. So on this particular screen, it's going to be the very top black bar at the top of the screen, and that is on the actual desktop. Here's what's most important about understanding software and the terminology, is what frustrates people a lot of times is when you lose, quote unquote, lose your toolbar, lose your window. You had one view and all of a sudden it changed and you don't know how to get it back. That's one of the basics we're going to discuss in part 1. So understanding where the taskbar is and knowing that you need to see that taskbar the entire time you're using the Zoom application. You usually don't want the entire Zoom application to take over your entire screen so that you can reach your taskbar. But we're going to practice that and talk more about that today. The second term is a window. Now, there's 2 terms for window. Windows, plural, is a software product that's produced by Microsoft, and that's what's loaded onto a PC computer. So when we talk about Windows or the version of Windows, that's a software product that you would need to purchase and use. However, software programs like Zoom, like Microsoft Office, they use Windows, and by that I mean a set of square boxes that actually have data inside of them that we can manipulate, control, and use to perform functions. So Windows is a product. Usually, Windows 10 is one of the latest, and a window is hallmarked by a square or a rectangle that you can control. You can have more than one window open at a time on your desktop, and if you have multiple monitors attached, you can have them on multiple screens. An active window is one that you're using currently. Now, this screen shows several active windows. We've got the main Zoom window. We have the window to the top right corner that has the speaker or the trainer in it. And then the toolbars, these three bars at the top of the entire screen, a little below it, and then at the bottom of the Zoom screen, those are windows as well, and you can actually move your toolbars around. The next is an icon. What an icon is a picture or graphic, and it's usually on your desktop or pinned to a taskbar. And if you double click it, it will open and start a software program. Maybe it's your internet browser, maybe it's a software program, but that's what an icon is. A toolbar is what's used inside of a software program, and that allows you to enable, disable, connect, click, and the items on each of the toolbars, I refer to them as buttons, which is a word coming up here shortly. When we talk about desktop, there's two terms for desktop, and one is desktop computer. And if you're referring to the hardware with the tower and the monitor, the keyboard and the mouse, that entire setup is called a desktop computer versus the laptop and the tablet and the iPhone. So desktop computer, those two words need to go together if you're talking about hardware. When you just use the term desktop, what they're talking about is the main screen on your device. And so it's hallmarked here by the light blue sky and the mountains and the trees in this image. That is the desktop. So often people will say, go onto your desktop, double click the icon, go on your desktop and find the open window. And so understanding that direction is very important to understanding how to manipulate and use Zoom. The next is a bar. And I'm not talking about the bar we're going to go to on Friday night to celebrate. I'm talking about the piece of window that you need to be very familiar and comfortable with. What a bar is there's 4 of them per window, 1 on each side. And it's very hard to see all the bars in a Zoom window because the background of Zoom is black and the bars are black. But if you hover your mouse over each of the edges, the top, the bottom, the sides, you will get an arrow left and right, or you will get some other kind of right and left arrow that makes a cross. And what those means is you can perform a function. So if you hover near one of the edges and get a double-sided arrow, that means you can click it and stretch it. You can move it. If you want to move the entire window anywhere you want on your monitors, then you need to go to the top. You need to left click and hold. And as you hold it, you can move your mouse to move that window anywhere on the screen that you want. So oftentimes I'll open my Zoom, and what's a really good habit to get into is whether you're a participant or actually running the Zoom meeting, you need to log on 10 minutes early. You need to check your microphone and your speakers. You need to make sure your internet connectivity is working. And then you need to arrange your desktop. And what I mean by that is open the windows you want to be open. And one is the main Zoom. But then make it smaller so you can still see the taskbar and the desktop of your computer. You also want to open the participant window. Move that somewhere so that it stays open your entire meeting. And then open your chat box and move that window somewhere you can see it the entire meeting. Rather than minimizing and maximizing or moving them and trying to hunt and search for them, you should arrange those prior to the meeting to stay in the same location so that you're used to finding those buttons and toolbars. That's what I suggest, and we're going to practice that after part 1. The next term is button. It refers to something that you can click one time on a toolbar inside of a software program. Like I said, it enables you to turn it on or off, or allow or disallow something, such as the mute button. You can click it off. The last term I'd like to share at this point is favicon. And what is a favicon? Well, favicon is a fabulous word, and also you can go to favicon.io, so www.favicon.io, and you can create your own for free. So it's a logo or an image or a picture that's associated with a website. So if you have a business or if you have your own website, you can create a favicon to go onto your address bar on an internet browser that's associated with your web page. And we'll talk a little more about that later. So these are some of the common tool or common vocabularies that we need to be familiar with so we can all talk together. The next basic foundational concept is platform versus device. So a device is the hardware. So be it a desktop computer or a laptop or a tablet or your phone or a smartwatch. And yes, a smartwatch is a device, and Zoom is currently in working on a production. So they're going to send out a Zoom application for the smartwatch shortly this fall, and so look out for that. But why do we need to know? Well, because the word platform is not the same as device. Device is the hardware. Platform is the language or the operating system or the format in which you need the device to communicate with the software so that you choose the right one when you download the product or update it. For instance, if I have an Apple computer and I go to download Zoom or update Zoom to the latest version, which by the way is 5.04, so if you're not on 5.04, go to zoom.com and download the latest version to your device, and it may be a different version for each of your devices. For instance, I was talking about this Mac computer. I would go to zoom.us or zoom.com and I will download the Mac version. If I have a PC, I'll download the PC version. If I have a phone, also an Apple phone versus an Android phone, I will download the appropriate platform. I need to know this because if I download the wrong software, it may damage my phone, it may not work properly, or it may not download at all. Just depends. Now we're talking about computer languages. The other picture on the screen has 5 of the most common internet browsers. So we've got Firefox, we've got Internet Explorer, we've got Safari, we've got Opera, and we've got Chrome. Now, some of these browsers work better with Zoom than others, and they all have a little bit of a different look. So make sure that you know, because if you're on one computer and you use Firefox and you get used to the look and feel of Zoom, and you use a different computer or a new computer, wherever you're training, and they're using a different platform, a different browser, it's going to look different and feel different, and I don't want that to trip you up. And yes, based upon your platform, your device, and your browser, you could get different features that are offered by Zoom. Some have limited features, so you're not crazy. Yes, you went on Zoom before and you had these features available, and the next time you go on, they're missing. And that could be because of the version updates. It could be because you're using a different browser or a different device or a different way to use the software. There is an application you can download to your computers, but then there's also the online version. And I highly recommend when you schedule a meeting or a class, I suggest you use the full version on any of the internet browsers except for Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer has trouble with some software programs, including community college faculty, including Nova. If you're going to be reporting and using Nova in the future, don't use Internet Explorer. I also don't recommend it with Zoom. There's 3 main operating systems on devices, and that is your Microsoft Windows, the Mac for the Apple devices, and the little penguin is Linux. So all of these are just different languages in which computer programs communicate. I think it's a very important concept. The next thing, the third thing we're going to talk about is the basic and advanced settings. In your profile, which I recommend you save a profile online through one of your browsers, and you go through all of the basic and advanced settings. Now this is going to go in depth on Zoom Master Part 2, but in advance of watching Zoom Master Part 2, go on to your online version so you have the full version and look at all the basic and advanced settings. There's quite a few. And why do you want to do that? Because you may be locking yourself out of a feature, and that's why you're having difficulty when you're in your class or your meeting. So you want to enable the things that you want to enable. On the other hand, if you're scheduling a meeting, it definitely depends on who your audience is and what you're doing as to what you enable and disable. For instance, if you're having a friends and family Zoom, you're going to have different settings than if you're having a classroom with 12 students. And that might be entirely different than a meeting with 300 people. Do you want private chat allowed? Do you not want private chat allowed? Do you want it to automatically record so you don't forget? Do you not want it recorded for privacy? So this is all found in your settings. So let's talk a little bit about the Zoom toolbar. We're going to go in depth on this in the Zoom Master 2, but I just briefly want to go over the most important features of the toolbar. Now, this toolbar may look different than what you're looking at right now, and that's very possible because every time could be different. And there are several reasons for that. The first reason is the version of Zoom that you have may or may not have that feature. So the people you're on the phone with may have different buttons than you do because you're working on different versions. Everyone should update to the latest. The second reason is that you do not have it set in your basic or advanced settings for you to have that feature, so you're actually locking yourself out of the feature everyone else is using. The third reason, and it may be that you know you unlocked that feature for you, but you go in and now it's gone on a meeting or on a class. And that's because you didn't schedule that meeting or class. Somebody else did. And when they did, they disabled it for you during that meeting. That can also happen. So those are the three most common ways that toolbars look different or that features kind of come and go. So let's go over some of the most common things right now. First is the mute button. Now remember, this toolbar is a window, so I can click it somewhere at the top and I can left click hold and I can move this toolbar anywhere I want to on my screen. To mute or unmute, you're only going to click one time. And it would be great if you put that toolbar in a location that you can see it during the entire meeting and hover your cursor over the mute so there's an easy way to click and unclick so you're not looking all over for your toolbar. Another fast fact is that if you mute it upon entry and then you have a chance to speak, you can hold down the space bar while you're speaking, kind of like a CB radio, and when you let up, it automatically mutes again. So give that a try. Now, what's important with mute besides turning it on and off and knowing where to find it is there's a drop-down box by the little down arrow next to it. That's a drop-down box for the mute feature. What you can do there is check and test your speakers and your microphone, and you can actually change them. If you want to use external speakers instead of your computers, this is where you would change that setting. If you want to go from headphones to computer back to headphones, you can actually do that as well. Use a different microphone. That's where you would check it. Now the next is stop video, and that's kind of confusing because it doesn't have anything to do with recording a video. The start and stop video actually is the control to control your camera. So when you want to be seen in person, you want to have the start video. And you would know you're in start video because you have the option to stop. If you have the option to start, then you could click it to start it. Now when you turn your video off, and you want to do this during a meeting for several reasons. One, you have to sneeze, you have to cough, you want to take a drink of coffee, take a bite of that donut. I would pause my camera while I did that, but also make sure I'm still on mute. Go ahead and do what you need to do, and then come back on camera. If you're going to get up and move around the room, you definitely want to stop your camera. It's very distracting to the other participants or your peers if you're moving around, getting up, sitting down, and they can see that. Especially if you get up and take your device with you, you definitely want to stop that video. Now, the drop-down box next to stop video is going to allow you many options with the camera. You can change cameras in case you have more than one. If your actual computer does not have a webcam or does not have a good quality webcam, you're going to want to buy an external webcam. And then you would have to use this drop-down box to select it when you're on Zoom so that your camera works. You can also choose a virtual background or change the virtual background through this drop-down box. You can also mirror your image, and you can enable high definition. You can also touch up images. There's many features for the camera available on this drop-down box. And you also want to check the video and the sound requirements in your basic and advanced settings. This next button is the Manage Participant. Now when you click this one, it actually opens a separate window and it'll list everybody who is in that meeting. If you're a host or a co-host, you're able to mute them directly from the participant box. You can admit them if you have a waiting room. You can reject them. You can send them back to a waiting room. And this is why a host or co-host would want that open during the entire meeting. Why would a participant want it open? Because when you open that box, it gives you features to actually communicate more with the people in the room. So it gives you a hand up for raising questions. It gives you a box of yes or no in case of voting. It Gives you an icon that you can push if you're on a coffee break to be right back. You can put a cup of coffee by your name in the participant window. So you always want to have your participant window open while you're on any class or meeting, and you want to keep it open. If you have more than one monitor, I suggest that you move your chat window and your participant window to another screen so it won't be interrupted while you're using the actual Zoom and looking at the participants in the room. The share button, you may or may not have that enabled for everybody in your meeting or class, but if it is, this is where you're going to share your screen, or someone else will share or stop their screen share. And then in this case, there's more, and of course your chat, breakout rooms, you can invite somebody directly from your Zoom meeting rather than leave the meeting, go back to your Outlook calendar, try to find it, forward it to somebody with an email address. There's an easier way to do it, and that's to invite them directly from the meeting. You can also record, hide your video panel entirely. You can share computer sound, and many more things. If poll was enabled, it'd be up here, and there's even more features that we're going to talk about more in depth in the Part 2 series. Now, we've gone over basics and foundations and windows and terminology, and hopefully you've learned something. And so I'd like you to reflect a moment and think, now where are you 1 to 10? Did you learn anything you didn't know before? And remember, this is just part 1 of 8 parts of becoming a Zoom master. So even if you learned a couple things, you've now got those foundations down, so you'll be strong coming into the next video. You are 1 step closer to being a Zoom master. All right, now we're done with part 1 of the Zoom Master series. So this last screen is to give you a little bit of a direction in practicing until you get to the Zoom Master Part 2. I want you to update your Zoom version, and I gave you directions here. And it would be best if every couple weeks you go to zoom.com or zoom.us, check the latest version, and make sure that you're updating as the versions come out. I would like you to explore different platforms. Check out what it looks like on your phone versus your laptop or tablet, versus online versus your application. Practice finding the bars on your window and moving those windows to different places on your screen. If using more than one monitor, practice moving those windows onto different screens. Utilize the new terminology we've discussed. Use it with colleagues. Teach each other. And then you can also go to favicon.io to explore or create a favicon. You can use these videos as tutorials. You can pause them, rewatch them as needed, stop the video and practice as we're talking. So actually use this video to the best of your ability to learn to be a Zoom master. And as always, watch out for Zoom Master Part 2, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you.